So talk to us a little bit about your experience with Maynard, because I know, it became more than just playing in the section, but obviously your relationship, but as well you began to write for the band and kind of how you got the opportunity to do that, because I'm sure Maynard doesn't just accept anybody's charts and say, oh yeah, we'll play them with the band.
Right. Well, how that worked out, it was fortuitous, as they say. When I joined the band, I was on that tour, I was the only writer, only person that said that I was a writer. And in reality, I was just kind of writing by ear, and I wasn't really well trained, not because of Raul Jerome. He tried really hard, I just didn't listen. So, but I was kind of naive enough to just go ahead and write it and say I was a writer. So Maynard always supported anybody's creative endeavors in the band. He was so beautiful that way. So I said, I'd like to write something for the band. He goes, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll check it out at rehearsal and let's get something to eat. So, I mean, he was that kind of supportive guy. So I wrote this chart on Gino Vanelli's Brother to Brother, which I loved Gino back in those days. And wrote it up, and he loved it, and the band, we played it for a while. So I became the writer on the band until the next tour when Dennis de Blasio came on. And I was like, one of the writers. But I found out very quickly, being able to write by ear and just kind of following intuition is good, but sometimes you're gonna miss. For every time you hit, you're gonna miss a bunch. So an album was coming up, and this was learning the hard way, man. Maynard brought some record producers into this club in Houston, and we're having a rehearsal, and I'd written this chart that was horrible. I thought it was the hippest thing ever, but all the trumpets are up way too high. They were in little clusters, and I knew we were in trouble in the rehearsal when lead trumpet player said, how many measures am I supposed to have between 20 and 33? I've got 10. I'm like, and then everybody else started saying, well, I've got 15, and over here I don't, and this note I think is wrong. And we played it, it sounded horrible, and I remember looking out into the club and seeing Maynard with the record executives walking out of the thing. So I went in the back and cried, and oh man, my life is over. But then Dennis de Blasio came on the band, Matt Harris, Tim Reese, Chris Brayman, all these great writers who were very schooled. They'd come from Eastman and North Texas and Miami. So I started learning from them, and the best education ever. But Maynard was always supportive. If you came up with something, he wanted to hear it. And at a sound check, we would just rehearse it and he'd check it out. And I remember the thrill I had when I wrote something for him and he put on his glasses and started reading it. And I thought, man, Maynard Ferguson is reading something that I wrote.
Right, that didn't exist before you did it.
Right, yeah, and nailed it. His sight reading was impeccable. All those studio years, Paramount and all that came back into play, and he read the daylights out of it.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a thrill. And to hear something recorded that he wrote. The first thing I ever had recorded was a song called South 21st Shuffle on the Live from San Francisco album. And I remember just listening to it for hours in disbelief that here was a Maynard recording of something I wrote, and I was playing on it, and I never got over that. That little spark of getting into music, why we get into it in the first place, has happily never left me. I can turn that switch on. And getting back to Hattiesburg, I started really, even though I was in the band programs, my big inspiration was a garage band, a literal garage band, not the program. Literally practicing in a garage, and I was transcribing. I didn't know what that was. I was just trying to figure things out from albums. So we would do like ZZ Top, and I'd put a horn part on it and transcribe Chicago or Blood, Sweat, and Tears or something. And I just carried over into Maynard's thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't until I got to North Texas that I really started to study the music a bit.